Captain James Reed stood at the observation deck window, watching Earth grow smaller as the shuttle climbed higher into orbit. His weathered hands, marked with old scars from his military days, gripped the metal railing tightly. The blue planet below, home to billions, now rested on his shoulders. "Captain Reed, we'll reach the rendezvous point in 10 minutes, said the pilot over the intercom. Reed nodded even though no one could see him. The weight of his mission pressed down on him like a physical force. 3 days ago, he had been enjoying retirement in his small cabin by the lake. Now, he represented all of humanity. The massive alien ship came into view suddenly, appearing from behind Earth's moon like a giant metal insect. Its surface gleamed with a copper-like shine, and strange organic patterns covered its hull. The ship was at least 5 miles long, dwarfing any human vessel ever built. "My God," whispered Reed. Fear and wonder battled in his mind. The shuttle comm system crackled. "Human vessel, maintain course. Entry port will open at coordinates ahead." The voice sounded almost human, but with an odd buzzing quality. Reed took a deep breath. Earth's scientists had worked day and night to create translation software after the Vesh had made first contact 1 month ago. As their shuttle approached, a section of the massive ship peeled open like petals of a flower. Inside was a cavernous docking bay where several smaller vessels, clearly alien in design, were already parked. "They're pulling us in with some kind of tractor beam," the pilot called out, a note of panic in his voice. "All systems responding normally, but I no longer have control." Reed straightened his simple gray uniform. "Stay calm. We knew this might happen." The shuttle settled gently onto the deck. Through the windows, Reed could see several tall, thin figures waiting. The Vesh stood at least 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and bodies covered in a hard, shiny exoskeleton. Their heads had large compound eyes that shimmered with rainbow colors. "Remember," said General Parker through Reed's earpiece, "you are there to establish peaceful contact. Earth needs their technology. Our climate systems are failing. Millions will die in the next decade without help." Reed nodded again. "Understood." The shuttle door opened with a hiss. Reed stepped out alone. As planned. The air smelled strange, like cinnamon and ozone. The nearest Vesh stepped forward. Unlike the others, this one wore a covering of fine metallic cloth over its exoskeleton. "Captain James Reed," it said, the translation coming through a small device on its upper right arm. "I am guide. I will take you to preparation." "Preparation for what?" asked Reed, fighting to keep his voice steady. "For the Queen. She has requested your presence specifically." This wasn't in the briefing. "Why me?" Guide's head tilted in a very unhuman way. "The Queen sees things others do not. She has watched your kind for many cycles. She chose you from many possible humans." A chill ran down Reed's spine. How long had the Vesh been watching Earth, and what had they seen in him? "Your world suffers," continued Guide. "The Queen knows this. She may help, or she may not. It depends on you now." Reed followed Guide into a corridor that seemed to pulse with faint light. The walls appeared almost alive, shifting slightly as they walked. Other Vesh stopped and stared as they passed. Some made clicking sounds with their mandibles. "Are they afraid of me?" asked Reed. "Curious," replied Guide. "Most thought humans would be lesser beings, primitive. They see now this is not true." Reed wasn't sure if that was a compliment. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with strange vegetation and flowing water. In the center sat what looked like a living transport pod. "We travel now to the Queen's level," said Guide. "There, your future, and your world's future, will be decided." As the pod closed around them, Reed looked back toward the docking bay where their shuttle waited. Earth seemed very far away now, and he wondered if he would ever see it again. The pod began to move, carrying him deeper into the heart of the alien ship, toward a meeting that would change everything. The transport pod slowed to a stop and opened like a blooming flower. Reed stepped out into a space unlike anything he had ever seen. The chamber stretched far above his head, with countless tunnels branching off in all directions. Soft blue light seemed to come from the walls themselves, which pulsed gently as if breathing. "This is a small section of the hive," Guide explained. "Our ship is both vessel and home." Reed watched as hundreds of Vesh moved with purpose through the space. Some climbed along the walls using their 4 arms, while others walked on the floor. Many carried strange tools or containers. "How many of you live here?" Reed asked, trying not to show his amazement. "This mothership houses 40,000 Vesh," Guide said. "It is one of 12 such vessels in our fleet." Reed swallowed hard. Earth's largest ships held a few thousand people at most. The technological gap between their species suddenly felt like a vast canyon. A group of smaller Vesh approached. Their exoskeletons were lighter in color, almost white, and they moved with quick, jerky motions. They circled Reed, their compound eyes reflecting his image dozens of times. "Worker class," Guide explained. "They are curious about you. Few have seen a human before." One of the workers reached out and touched Reed's arm with a delicate appendage. Reed forced himself not to pull away. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. "You are soft," the worker said through its translation device. "How do you survive with no shell?" Before Reed could answer, another worker spoke. "I studied human biology. They have bones inside, not outside. Very strange design." The workers continued examining him with scientific interest. One reached up to touch his hair, making a series of clicking sounds that the translator didn't catch. "Enough," Guide said finally. "The human must be prepared for the Queen." The workers retreated reluctantly. Guide led Reed down a corridor that seemed to shift and change as they walked. Reed realized with a start that the walls were actually moving, rearranging themselves. "The ship is alive?" he asked. "In a way," Guide replied. "It is partly grown, partly built. The walls respond to our needs and the Queen's wishes." They passed chambers filled with strange machinery, others with what appeared to be gardens of alien plants. In one large room, Reed saw young Vesh, smaller versions of the adults, being taught by an older Vesh who projected images into the air. "We have studied your kind for many cycles," Guide said as they walked. "Your television signals, your internet, your books and music." Reed frowned. "How long have you been watching us?" "The first observation post was established near your moon 60 Earth years ago," Guide said casually. "The Queen has been particularly interested in human art and emotion." Reed tried to hide his shock. 60 years of being watched, and no one on Earth had known. They stopped before a large doorway made of a material that looked like mother of pearl. 2 massive Vesh stood guard, their exoskeletons a deep red color. They carried staff-like weapons that hummed with energy. "Warrior class," Guide explained. "The Queen's personal guards." The warriors studied Reed with what he could only interpret as suspicion. One of them stepped forward, towering over both Reed and Guide. "The human is smaller than expected," it said, voice deeper than the others. "Is it truly the one the Queen requested?" "It is," Guide confirmed. The warrior moved closer to Reed. "Know this, human. If you threaten our Queen in any way, your death will be immediate." Reed met the compound eyes steadily. "I'm here for peaceful contact. Nothing more." The warrior stepped back, and the pearly doors began to part. A sweet, strange scent wafted out. "The Queen awaits," Guide said. "Remember, do not speak until spoken to. Do not approach unless invited. The fate of your species may depend on this meeting." Reed took a deep breath and stepped forward, into the Queen's chamber. Behind him, the doors closed with a soft sound, cutting him off from Guide and everything familiar. Ahead, in the center of a vast circular room, something massive moved in the shadows. Reed stood frozen at the entrance of the vast chamber. Unlike the blue light of the rest of the ship, this room glowed with a warm amber. The ceiling arched high above, decorated with strange symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched. In the center of the room was a raised platform surrounded by pools of shimmering liquid, and on that platform sat the largest being Reed had ever seen. The Vesh Queen was easily 3 times the size of the warrior guards. Her exoskeleton shone with an iridescent quality, reflecting rainbow colors with every slight movement. Unlike the other Vesh, she had 6 arms instead of 4, each ending in delicate, almost human-like hands. Her compound eyes were enormous, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pierce directly into Reed's soul. "Captain James Reed," she said, her voice resonating not just in his ears, but somehow inside his mind as well. "Step forward." Reed walked slowly toward the platform. Several smaller Vesh, attendants, he guessed, moved away as he approached. "You are afraid," the Queen said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Reed admitted, seeing no point in lying, but also curious. This seemed to please her. The Queen's mandibles clicked softly in what might have been a smile. Honesty. Good. So rare among leaders of species. She leaned forward slightly. "Your planet sends you to ask for our help." Reed nodded. "Earth faces serious environmental challenges. Our scientists believe we have less than 10 years before your ecosystems collapse beyond recovery," the Queen finished for him. "We know. We have been watching the changes on your world." She rose from her seat, towering over Reed. The attendants scattered, clearly surprised by her movement. The Queen rarely stood, Reed realized. "What you do not know, human, is why I asked for you specifically." The Queen's voice became softer in his mind. "I've been wondering that myself," Reed said, looking up at her massive form. "In our study of humans, we noticed something unique about your kind. You fight even when logic says you should surrender. You hope even when facts say there is no hope." She moved closer to the edge of the platform. "It is fascinating to us." Reed wasn't sure how to respond. "It's just human nature, I suppose." "And you, James Reed, embody this quality strongly. Your military records show many instances where you refuse to abandon others, even at great risk to yourself." Reed felt uncomfortable that they knew so much about him. "How did you access my military records?" The Queen made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your digital security is primitive to us." She descended from the platform in a fluid motion that seemed impossible for her size. The attendants backed away further, making urgent clicking sounds among themselves. "My Queen, the protocol forbids," one began. "Silence," she commanded, and the attendant immediately fell quiet. Now standing on the same level as Reed, the Queen was even more imposing. She bent down until her face was near his. "My council believes your species is too dangerous to help, too unpredictable. They see your wars, your cruelty to each other, your destruction of your own planet." Her compound eyes reflected Reed's face hundreds of times. "They want me to deny your request." Reed's heart sank. He had failed before he even started. "But I see something they do not," the Queen continued. "Potential." Without warning, she reached out with 4 of her arms and enveloped Reed in what could only be described as an embrace. Gasps and clicks of shock came from every Vesh in the chamber. The moment her arms touched him, Reed felt a rush of emotions and images flood his mind. He saw Earth through alien eyes, beautiful, fragile, precious. He felt the Queen's fascination with human art, music, literature. He experienced her loneliness as a ruler set apart from her own kind. When she released him, Reed staggered backward, overwhelmed by what he had experienced. "The embrace is sacred," an attendant said, shock evident in its translated voice, "never given to non-Vesh." The Queen stood tall again. "Things change, as they must." She looked down at Reed, who was still trying to process what had happened. "Now you begin to understand, James Reed. What I have shared with you, no human has ever known." Reed looked up at her, seeing the Queen in a completely new way. "Why me? Why now?" "Because," she said, "your world is not the only one in danger. and what I just gave you may save us both." The chamber had fallen completely silent. The Queen's attendants remained frozen in shock after witnessing the sacred embrace given to a human. Reed himself still felt dizzy from the flood of alien thoughts and emotions that had poured into his mind. "Come," the Queen said, gesturing to a smaller side chamber. "We must speak privately." Reed followed her, aware of the stares from every Vesh in the room. The side chamber was simpler but still elegant, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. As they entered, the doorway sealed itself behind them. "What you experienced," the Queen began, "was a form of mental sharing. Among my kind, it is reserved only for the most important moments in life." Reed steadied himself against a crystal formation. "I saw so many things. Your home world, your people." He looked up at her. "Your fears." The Queen lowered herself to a sitting position, bringing her massive head closer to Reed's level. "Yes. Now you know the truth that my council wishes to hide. We are dying, James Reed." "Your species is facing extinction?" Reed asked. "Not immediately. But yes, eventually." Her compound eyes dimmed slightly. "The Vesh have mastered many technologies, extending our lives, conquering disease, even reshaping worlds to our needs. But in our pursuit of perfection, we lost something vital." Images flashed in Reed's mind, remnants of the embrace. He saw generations of Vesh growing more uniform, more logical, less diverse. "You can't adapt anymore," Reed said slowly, understanding. "You're too specialized." "Precisely." The Queen's mandibles clicked softly. "Each new generation produces fewer offspring. Our genetic diversity diminishes. We estimate that within 1,000 years, the last Vesh will die." Reed frowned. 1,000 years is a long time to find a solution. For humans, perhaps. For us, it is tomorrow. She gestured with one delicate hand. "We live for centuries, change slowly, think in terms of millennia. We have tried to solve this problem for 300 of your years without success." The wall beside them suddenly transformed into a viewing screen. Reed saw Earth, beautiful and blue. "When we discovered your world, we saw a species that should have destroyed itself many times over. You fight endless wars. You pollute your only home. You divide yourselves by borders and beliefs." The Queen's voice was not judgmental, merely stating facts. "Yet you survive. You create art of profound beauty. You sacrifice for strangers. You change and adapt at a rate that astonishes us." The screen shifted to show images of human history, cave paintings, the pyramids, modern cities, spaceflight, all in rapid succession. "My council's first plan was to harvest your world," the Queen said matter-of-factly. Reed tensed. "Harvest." "To take what we needed, genetic material, cultural artifacts, study specimens, before your civilization collapsed under its own weight." She turned her massive head to look directly at Reed. "Many still favor this approach." Reed felt cold fear grip his stomach. "And you? What do you favor?" "Something unprecedented. A true alliance." The Queen's eyes brightened. "Humans have what the Vesh have lost: creativity, adaptability, emotional depth. We have what humans need: advanced technology, especially in environmental science and medicine." The screen changed again, showing two possible futures. In one, Earth's cities drowned under rising seas, forests burned, and people fought over dwindling resources. In the other, green cities thrived with strange but beautiful technology integrated into the natural world. "Both futures are possible," the Queen said, "but my council remains unconvinced that humans are worthy of our help." Reed stared at the images of Earth's potential doom and salvation. "Why tell me all this? What can one human do to change their minds?" The Queen rose to her full height again. "Because in our long observation of humanity, we have learned one important truth: sometimes a single human can change everything." She touched Reed's shoulder lightly with one finger. and because I have come to admire your species, despite your flaws, perhaps because of them. You've been fighting for us, Reed said, suddenly understanding. Against your own council. Yes, she admitted. And now, I need you to prove me right. The council has demanded proof of humanity's worth, the Queen explained as she led Reed through a corridor he hadn't seen before. They have prepared a series of tests. Reed walked quickly to keep up with her long strides. What kind of tests? Challenges designed to measure your species' qualities, not just intelligence, but courage, compassion, creativity. The Queen's voice lowered. Many believe you will fail. They entered a large circular chamber where 5 Vesh waited. These were different from the workers or warriors Reed had seen before. Their exoskeletons were marked with complex patterns, and they wore ceremonial sashes across their bodies. The Council of Elders, the Queen announced. She took a position behind Reed, no longer beside him. One elder stepped forward. Its compound eyes were cloudy with age. Human James Reed, you stand before us as representative of Earth. Your performance will determine if your species deserves our aid. Reed straightened his back, feeling the weight of responsibility. I'm ready. The first test begins now, the elder said, tapping a control on its wrist. The floor beneath Reed suddenly dissolved into a perfect illusion of empty space. He appeared to be standing on nothing, thousands of feet above an alien landscape. His stomach lurched, but he forced himself not to step back or show fear. Interesting, a different elder remarked. Most species panic at this point. The illusion vanished, revealing the solid floor again. Reed released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The test of fear, the Queen explained quietly from behind him. You passed. Before Reed could respond, the chamber transformed again. Now he stood in what appeared to be a Vesh nursery. Small, pale Vesh hatchlings moved about, their exoskeletons still soft and flexible. One approached Reed, making soft clicking sounds. This hatchling has a genetic defect, an elder explained coldly. In our society, it would not be allowed to drain resources. What would you do with it in your human society? Reed looked at the small creature, which seemed perfectly fine to his eyes. He knelt down to its level. On Earth, we believe every life has value, he said firmly. We would provide care, education, and opportunity, the same as any other child. The elders clicked their mandibles in what might have been disapproval. The nursery illusion faded. Inefficient, one elder commented. But compassionate, countered the Queen. Next, Reed found himself in a simulation of a burning building. He could feel the heat of the flames, hear the cracking of timbers. Voices called for help from different directions. You can save one group only, an elder's voice explained. Choose the 3 scientists who might cure diseases, or the 5 children with no special talents. Reed didn't hesitate. He ran toward the children's voices. The simulation ended abruptly. The elders conferred among themselves with rapid clicking sounds. You chose emotion over logic, one accused. Reed shook his head. I chose potential over certainty. Those children could become anything, artists, leaders, or even scientists themselves. This caused a pause in their discussion. The tests continued for hours. Reed solved puzzles in unexpected ways, navigated ethical dilemmas, and demonstrated human reasoning. By conventional Vesh standards, he failed many challenges, choosing risky compassion over safe efficiency, emotion over pure logic. After the final test, Reed stood exhausted before the council. The Queen had remained silent through most of the trials, but now she moved forward. Have you seen enough? She asked the elders. The oldest elder stepped forward. The human displays many concerning qualities. Emotional decision-making, inefficient resource allocation, attachment to defective units. Reed felt his hopes sinking. However, the elder continued. He has also demonstrated unexpected problem-solving abilities, creativity beyond our prediction models. And the elder seemed reluctant to continue. And the Queen prompted. and a quality we do not fully understand. The human makes choices that our simulations predict should lead to failure, yet somehow finds success through methods we cannot anticipate. The Queen's compound eyes seem to shine with something like triumph. The quality you cannot name is hope, Elder Vale. Humans maintain hope even when logic says there is none. It drives them to find solutions where we see only problems. She turned to Reed, and through the lingering connection of their shared embrace, he felt her sending a message. Asterisk, you have done well. But the hardest challenge is yet to come, asterisk. The council members withdrew to deliberate. As they left, the Queen leaned down to Reed. Prepare yourself, she whispered. Not all Vesh want this alliance. Some are already moving against us both. Reed paced in the small chamber where the Queen had instructed him to wait. Hours had passed since the council left to make their decision. His mind raced with everything he had learned about the Vesh, their advanced technology, their biological crisis, and their divided opinions about humanity. The door slid open, but instead of the Queen, a Vesh worker hurried in. Its movements were jerky with what Reed now recognized as agitation. Human Reed, it buzzed quietly. You must come quickly. The Queen sent me. Reed frowned. Where is she? No time to explain. The worker looked nervously over its shoulder. Follow me. Quietly. Something felt wrong, but Reed had few options. He followed the worker through back passages he hadn't seen before. These corridors were narrower, dimly lit, and seemed less maintained than the main areas of the ship. Where are we going? Reed whispered. To safety, the worker replied. The Queen will meet us there. They turned a corner and entered a large cargo hold. Reed stopped abruptly. Inside waited a group of warrior-class Vesh, their red exoskeletons gleaming under the lights. This was no rescue. You lied, Reed said to the worker, who quickly scuttled away. One warrior stepped forward, larger than the others. Reed recognized the markings of a high-ranking officer. Human, it said, voice cold and mechanical through the translator. Your presence has corrupted our Queen's thinking. The council deliberates too long on a simple matter. Reed backed up slowly. And what matter is that? Whether to help your dying world or to harvest its resources. The warrior's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. The choice is obvious to those who truly care for the future of the Vesh. Reed understood now. You're planning to attack Earth regardless of the Council's decision. Attack? No. The warrior shook its massive head. We will simply take what we need to ensure our survival. Your species will be studied. Some will be preserved. Reed felt cold anger rising. Preserved. Like specimens in a zoo. A generous comparison. The warrior gestured, and two others moved to flank Reed. The Queen's fondness for humans has compromised her judgment. She will be removed from power, and you will help us demonstrate why humans are too dangerous to be allies. I won't help you, Reed said firmly. You misunderstand. The warrior raised what looked like a weapon. Your cooperation is not required. Only your body, for dissection and study. Just as the warriors closed in, the ship's alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed along the walls and ceiling. What is happening? Demanded the lead warrior. A panicked worker rushed into the cargo hold. Commander, the Queen has discovered your plan. She has alerted the council and is coming here with her royal guards. The commander hissed in anger. Secure the human. Prepare tow. The far wall of the cargo hold suddenly melted away as if dissolved by acid. Through the opening strode the Queen, flanked by her red-armored guards. Her compound eyes blazed with fury. Treason, she said, her voice echoing not just in the room, but in Reed's mind as well. You dare to undermine the council's authority, to plot against your Queen. The commander stood tall. I act for the good of all Vesh. Humans are a resource to be used, not allies to be trusted. That is not your decision to make. The Queen's voice thundered. The commander raised its weapon. It is now. Everything happened in a blur. The rebellious warriors attacked. The royal guards rushed to defend their queen. Reed, drawing on his military training, ducked behind cargo containers. He spotted a control panel similar to ones he'd seen elsewhere on the ship. Understanding flickered from his mental connection with the queen. If he could reach it, he might be able to seal off the cargo bay, trapping the rebels. Reed darted between containers, avoiding the clash of Vesh fighting with strange energy weapons. He reached the panel and began pressing symbols that somehow seemed familiar to him now. "The human," shouted the commander, noticing Reed's actions. It fired its weapon. The queen moved with surprising speed for her size, placing herself between Reed and the energy blast. She staggered as the shot hit her exoskeleton, cracking it along one side. "Complete the sequence," she commanded Reed. Reed finished the input. Barriers slammed down, sealing the rebels inside the cargo hold with them. Royal guards quickly overwhelmed the outnumbered traitors. "My queen, you are injured," one guard said with concern. "It is minor," she replied, though Reed could feel through their connection that she was in pain. She turned to him. "You acted quickly, James Reed. You saved many lives today." Reed looked at her damaged exoskeleton. "You saved mine. You could have been killed." "Yes," she said simply. "A sacrifice I would make again." Her enormous eyes studied him. "Perhaps now the Council will understand what I have seen all along." "What's that?" Reed asked. "That humans and Vesh are stronger together than apart. That our differences complete each other rather than separate us." The commander, now restrained, hissed in disgust. "Sentiment will be the end of our species." The queen looked down at the rebel. "No, Commander. It will be our new beginning." 1 month after the rebellion, Reed stood at the same observation window where his journey had begun. This time, he watched Earth grow larger as the shuttle descended. Beside him stood the queen, her massive form barely fitting in the human vessel. Her damaged exoskeleton had been repaired, though a faint line still showed where the rebel's weapon had struck her. "Your world looks even more beautiful up close," she said, her voice gentle in Reed's mind. "Wait until you see the oceans, the forests," Reed replied. "Though many are damaged now, but not beyond healing." The queen's compound eyes reflected the blue planet. "The Council's decision is final. We will help Earth recover." After the rebellion, the Council had deliberated for only 1 day. The queen's willingness to sacrifice herself for a human had shocked them. Reed's actions during the crisis had demonstrated the unpredictable creativity the Vesh so desperately needed. The shuttle's comm system crackled. "Captain Reed, we're approaching the landing site. World leaders are assembled and waiting." Reed nodded to the pilot. "Copy that." In the cargo hold behind them, the first shipment of Vesh technology waited, living machines that could clean polluted water, remove carbon from the atmosphere, and restore damaged ecosystems. It was just the beginning of what the Alliance would bring. "Some of my people still have doubts," the Queen said. "Change comes hard to the Vesh." "Many humans will be afraid too," Reed admitted. "We've spent centuries imagining aliens as invaders, not allies." The Queen made a soft clicking sound that Reed now recognized as amusement. "Yet here we are. Proof that imagination can become reality." The shuttle landed smoothly in the middle of a massive stadium. Through the windows, Reed could see thousands of people watching, along with news cameras broadcasting to billions more around the world. World leaders stood on a red-carpeted platform, trying to look confident despite their obvious nervousness. "Ready?" Reed asked. "Are you?" the Queen countered. Through their mental link, she could sense his anxiety. Reed took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I was a retired soldier living alone by a lake. Now I'm bringing an alien queen to meet Earth's leaders. Life rarely follows the paths we expect, she said. That is something humans understand better than the Vesh. The shuttle door opened. Reed stepped out first, blinking in the bright sunlight. A hush fell over the crowd as the Queen emerged behind him, ducking her massive head to fit through the door. Gasps and murmurs spread through the stadium. The sight of the huge insectoid being was shocking despite all the images that had been shared beforehand. Reed stepped up to the microphone. "People of Earth, I present Queen Ilara of the Vesh, who comes in peace and friendship." The queen moved forward with grace that belied her size. When she spoke, her words were broadcast both through speakers and directly into the minds of everyone present. A gentle touch, not an invasion. "We come not as conquerors, but as friends," she said. "Our species are different in body, but alike in spirit. We both face challenges that threaten our future. Together, we can overcome them." Slowly, the world leaders stepped forward to greet her, some with fear, some with curiosity, but all with hope. Later that evening, after the formal meetings and agreements, Reed and the Queen stood alone on the balcony of the building that would become the first Vesh embassy on Earth. "It's only the beginning," Reed said, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors the Queen had never seen before. "Yes," she agreed, "a new chapter for both our kinds." She turned to face him, lowering herself to his level as she had done that first day in her chamber. Gently, she extended her 4 arms, enveloping Reed in another embrace. This time, he was prepared for the rush of emotions and thoughts. He felt her pride, her hope, and something deeper, affection for him, and for humanity's strange, beautiful ways. When the embrace ended, the Queen spoke the words that would change Reed's life forever. "Your species' greatest strength is not your technology or your numbers, but your capacity to hope in the face of impossibility. This is what makes humans precious in a universe of cold calculation." Reed smiled up at her. "And now we'll teach that to the Vesh, while you teach us about the stars." The Queen's mandibles formed what Reed now recognized as her version of a smile. "Together, James Reed, the future belongs to both our kinds now." As night fell on Earth, lights came on in cities across the planet. From space, they would look like stars, a perfect reflection of the universe that humans and Vesh would now explore side by side.